welcome to this week's edition of the Sanditon Chronicles. I am your host, Maureen. We are here with one of our regular co-hosts, Janice. I almost called you Jeanette, who is a co-host of my other podcast. But we are joined with Janice today, and we are talking episode 5. That is honestly one of my favorite episodes.
I like it.
Because nonverbal is my sweet spot, and there is so much nonverbal in this that I am dying to talk about.
Okay, well, you want to know what I titled this episode?
Yes, I do. I always know what you want to title these episodes.
I'm calling it Secrets Revealed.
Ooh, yes. A couple different ones.
Big ones.
So now I didn't do a rewatch because this is one I've watched even on its own, separate from the rest of it. So I didn't do a rewatch today or yesterday, but I'm not going to go in like order necessarily. I want to hit the big spots. But one of the first things we see, right, is Sydney and Charlotte bumping into each other, right?
Right. Although, yes, that is. But what I hadn't remembered till I watched it again was the first scene sort of sets up the rest of a lot of things that happen. And that is when Charlotte goes to see Georgiana with the letter from Otis. So
yeah, and they're reading from the book. What does she call it?
It's a real book, Self-Control by Mary Brunton.
Yeah. Well, I think Charlotte was smart enough to know that Mrs. Griffiths was going to know if it was a fake or real book.
Right, and also it's a real book from that period of time.
Yeah. And I love how, to jump ahead just a bit, I love how Mrs. Griffiths later on was like, really need to read this book.
Yes. Yeah, so they're so excited about it, and yeah.
But that's another scene where Georgiana is able to lie so innocently and so well.
She
on
is
of my shyness.
Bold-faced liar. I mean, yeah.
But this really time, Charlotte's more willing to accept it and to go along with it.
Yeah, because she's already doing secrets. She's going behind everybody's back already and feels very justified about it.
Yeah. Do you think some part of her is kind of exhilarated by the idea of doing something behind Sydney's back? I need to stop calling him Theo.
Yeah. Yes, I think it is, because she feels like he's just being unfair, and all those things she says to Georgiana about him. The self-important and all that. So,
and I think that she's almost like, I have one up on you. I'm going to show you I know better. And I think also there's an element of Charlotte has never done anything wrong. So it's almost like,
she's not did anything wrong while she's there. Now, do I believe for a minute that she never did anything wrong with her brothers? And
not on this, I mean, like on this scale.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, every sibling has got to have their issues. If they say they don't, they're absolutely lying to you.
Right.
But I think on this scale, like with Georgiana, when she lied so bold-faced to Mrs. Griffiths the first time about a picnic, Charlotte was completely taken aback. Like, never seen anyone do that before. And when people are in the wrong, Charlotte is incensed that you didn't do the right thing. So I think that just in her nature in general is more inclined to do the right thing.
Oh, I agree. So this, unless in like this, right? Unless in a situation like this where she thinks it's justified.
Yeah. So I think there's a double exhilaration there for her, and I like that. For as good of a liar as Georgiana is, and as much as she knows Sydney is not allowing this, and she is well aware that Mrs. Griffiths knows now she's not allowed to have any contact with Otis.
Right.
Charlotte's the one trying to keep the secret as she reads this letter.
Right. Yeah.
Georgiana just starts yelling things out like, do you
know.
want everybody to know?
Yeah, exactly. Instead of being a little devious and secretive.
Yes.
She gets emotional.
What does she say when she yells out?
All I want is an hour or two with him.
Yeah, that's right. Is that so wrong?
Yeah, that's what she says. Is that so wrong?
And Charlotte says, we will think of something, and then starts reading very loudly from the book.
Right. because she assumes that Georgiana is right outside. I mean, that
Mrs.
Mrs. Griffiths is right outside the door. It's interesting. I haven't read this whole chapter in the book, but it does start off differently. It's Mrs. Griffiths is more of a pushover in the book.
I mean, she kind of is. Oh, in this scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in this scene, more of a pushover than she doesn't even, she's like, oh yes, I'd be happy to go run some errands.
Oh.
When Charlotte says she'll sit with her and read with her.
That's not something you want in someone who is playing guardian to someone who's not making good decisions.
Yeah, so obviously this was a rewrite.
Yes.
And
I like this better.
one. Yeah, I agree. Much more effective.
Because in general, I think Mrs. Griffiths is a pushover. If you look at like every time, and that's Georgiana knew that. She knew that if I just threw around an important name, she's going to cave immediately. And this is exactly what happens. I mean, in the previous episode, it was absolutely not. Picnics are disgraceful. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Parker are going to be there. Absolutely go have a picnic. Like,
why didn't you say that?
Why is it not disgraceful if he's there? What makes it undisgraceful if Mary and Tom are there? So she is kind of a pushover in that way. But I think when it's just, I think she considers Georgiana and the Beaufort girls more insignificant than she is. Like, I'm your better, so I don't have to listen to you. But whereas Tom and Mary and Sydney, and I would even wager to say that Arthur and Diana, if they were to say something to her, she would have bowed to them completely.
Yeah. No, I agree. Because she sees them as higher class, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that, and that's a shame because I think that they kind of see girls who are not old enough to be on their own, but even if they have money, they still aren't seen as higher class, even though it's not their fault that they don't have parents. It's not their fault that they're women, but the times are so weird.
Yeah. And, we don't see that so much in our day and age, but in certain circles, I'm sure you still do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kids don't. I as a youth leader, I see that a lot. Kids don't know enough, and that's something that we when we preach to our kids, that's something we tell them all the time. That just because you're young, doesn't mean you're ineffective. Just because you're young doesn't mean that you don't understand things, so that you don't have rights, so that you're not good enough. Youth has nothing to do with any of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I know. Can we stick one more thing in here before we get to Sydney and Charlotte?
Absolutely.
The other thing that gets set up on this, early on is Lady Denham suddenly appearing at Denham Place to have tea and announce to Esther that she's written to Lord Babington and promised that Esther will see him at the cricket match Thursday. And it cracks me up. Esther's response is, now I will appear rude. And then Edward just about chokes.
Well, no, he chokes when Lady Denham says, I think it's rather late to be concerned about appearances.
You're right.
And then Edward he starts laughing. He has to cough. And even when Lady Denham looks up to him, I like how she's like, it's almost like either, are you still here? Or why do you find that funny? I was being serious.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, he tried to make it sound like he just was choking, that's how he tried to act.
But Lady Denham's not stupid.
No.
I do like that when she first comes in there and she says she wrote to Babington, and Esther says very sternly, to what end?
I know.
She's instantly angry.
Yeah, that's right. She is.
And that's even before that, before Lady Denham comes in, when Esther walks in the room to grab her book, Edward says, I was wondering when you would appear. Are you ill? Right. And she doesn't even speak to him. She doesn't even utter a word to him. She gives him that icy glare and tries to leave him, tries to walk away.
Right. Yeah. And it's all a result of the conversation they had the night before.
And he doesn't even, he sees himself as being so in control of Esther and her so much in his pocket that he doesn't even recognize that. Even when she gives him that glare, he doesn't even recognize that she's mad at him.
Right. Yeah, that's right. She does not.
The only excuse must be that she's sick, because what other reason could she possibly have to be mad at me, the one she adores and loves?
Right. Yeah. And then after, that I may come later, but after Lady Denham leaves, then they have that conversation where Esther says, well, maybe she's doing us a favor
Mm-hmm.
because, you've said I need to marry. Edward is like, I did, like he didn't even remember he'd said that when they were having that conversation, and she was trying to get him to run off like he talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't do it.
I think that he kind of expected her to take that, because I think that he remembered. I kind of took that when he said that, because the tone of his voice was, did I? So it was almost like he knew what he said, but he wanted to see how far she was going to push this. Almost like there's no way she's going to marry somebody else. So let's see how far we can take this little experiment.
No, I agree. But I also think he was just like, he wants to be in the moment, and he doesn't want anybody to tell him what he said. And
that's true.
And
anyway. I think he also was kind of thinking that she would tolerate him getting a wife, but she couldn't bear to get another husband because Edward was too. It goes back to when Clara, oh my gosh, I could only remember her real name for a minute. I almost called her Lily. But when Clara says, I imagine that it's hard to find someone to measure up to Edward. That's fair, yes. I'll grant you. And I think that's really how he thinks. Like, there's no way she'll find someone to replace me, and she wouldn't even try. So to hear that she was giving into his aunt's schemes, I think he was almost like, uh-oh. And so
yes, and Clara is, she's very great observer of people.
Mm-hmm.
She hones in, and I'm glad that character is going to be back.
Me
and
too.
It's going to be really interesting to see where this goes.
There was some talk about that on the live. Now, for those of you who are watching this, we are recording the night the live aired, so I'm gonna change between last week and today. But when we recorded the live earlier, there was talk of, they just put out an announcement that they're looking for 2 babies that need to be around 6 weeks old. And so we were trying to guesstimate whose baby it would be. And I think the obvious choice is Esther, that, because the time jump is 9 months. And so at some point in season, if it's 9 months, then Esther, depending on when, if Sanditon actually ended a month after the wedding, or, I don't know how they're going to work that in. So she's either going to have to be pregnant and have birth in the season 2, or she's already going to have the baby. So I think one of them's hers, but the options that we were throwing around were, 1, they need 2 babies because oftentimes they need 2 for 1, or 1 is Esther's and 1 is Clara and Edward's. Because
it's hard to know, but they do have to have 2 babies for 1.
Yeah, not always though. It depends on how long they're on the screen.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
what
true.
They need them for, and how long they're going to be in a period. Like, if it's just, I think that, I don't know what the rules are where they're filming though. I know the laws here say that you can't have a newborn. And of course, this is knowledge of going off of when Friends was still in syndication. So those rules might have changed a little bit.
Yeah, right.
But I think here it's that you can't have a newborn, right? You can't have but all the babies are bigger, because you cannot have a newborn to film scene. They have to be older. And I think that's why there's a 6-week thing. But I think it goes to, even with little kids, it goes to how many hours you are on the screen, how many hours you have to spend filming dictates whether or not you need 1 or 2 for the same role.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
But I don't know how long they need the baby for.
I guess we'll find out in about 6 months or so.
There's so many different ways that this could go.
Yep.
But that's right. Clara is pretty fantastic. So, and I think Edward sees an advantage in her, where, because he and Clara aren't really enemies, and we actually see that in this episode when they're sitting down at the table, and she says that to him. We'll get to that a little bit later, but I think that Edward is sort of building up an admirer. He thinks he's building up an admirer in Clara, but also keeping her as a safety net, where if Lady Denham gives her the inheritance, then, well, I've already been in there, I've already had her, I've already done all this stuff, so we're good to go. With Esther, it was, she can be his puppet, and she will do anything for Esther, anything to save Esther or Edward. And I think that Edward is smart to know that at some point he's going to need someone to save him, because he's going to make a stupid mistake.
Right. Well, it's not going to be Esther, I don't think.
No, but Esther's all done with him.
Yeah. But it will be interesting to see if it was Clara that was pregnant, then that might force Lady Denham's hand about giving Edward at least some money.
Oh, I think that'll make her go the opposite.
Maybe.
I think she's so proper that if there is a baby that was, especially since it happened on her dining room floor that she was already incensed about, like irate about, if Clara ends up pregnant from that, I think it's going to be like, no, I'm not associated with you anymore. I have no relation to you. We are done.
But the truth of the matter was, I mean, they didn't show it in the film, but we know from the outtake that she left with Crow. So, I mean, I'm sure he could always plead that who knows who she's been with.
Oh, I'm sure he'll plead that no matter what. Absolutely.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see anyway. So we probably should get back to episode 5. So what we've already had.
Associate things in there. So after we see Lady Denham, and I think Annie Reed just did great in that scene. I love her mannerisms, and when it's a slow build to telling her that she wrote to Bevington to tell him to come to the cricket on Friday or on Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday? Thursday, right?
I think it's Thursday, yeah.
And just, she's so proud of herself. And she's just, I like watching her toy with Esther. Oh my gosh, I've been reading press releases so much I can only remember the real names. She's been toying so much with Esther and she's so proud of how she's gotten this leg up and how she has outmaneuvered them finally, because she hasn't been able to really put a wedge in between Esther and Edward yet. And I think that this was also partially that. I finally got a wedge in between you two, and I'm gonna relish it. I'm gonna build this up, and it's gonna be great. And Annie Reed's face is so triumphant when she's done saying that.
Yeah, and her fear and belief that Edward wasn't worth much will be confirmed later. But it hasn't really been confirmed in a way that everybody could see till now at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've seen Annie Reed in a couple more shows, since in the last few months, and she is really a great actress.
Yeah, she can do it all.
I thought so before, but it's great to see her in other roles. And there's some that I've heard about that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So, when we did our Annie Reed spotlights on her in our Facebook group, it was really fun to go through and look at all of her past projects. And there's a ton of YouTube videos on her where she's put out her singing, where she's put out just her interviews, her clips from the show she's been on. It was so much fun to watch it because she's so versatile. She's so good.
Yeah, that's really neat.
After we have the tea in Denham Place, we go up to Trafalgar House. I had to remember the name.
No, actually, before that, we see Tom talking to Stringer and Robinson about getting paid. I called it pay and promises.
Oh, Tom. And I think the real bummer about Tom is he actually wanted his promises to be true. He wasn't just like screwing people over just to get them to keep working. Like, he actually was thinking Sydney's going to make it right. Sydney's going to come back. He's going to have the money. It's going to be fine. So even though he didn't have the guarantee, I think he just was so desperate that he was assuming. I don't even think it was that he had faith in Sydney. I think he was just so desperate and the need was so real that he just thought it has to be this way. It can be no other option.
Right.
I'm going to get to you.
Right.
So I know that as I've talked to people are really upset at how, and I think Tom did handle the situation badly, obviously, but I don't think it was really malicious in how he handled it. I think it was a man who was desperate, who wanted to be the man that he portrayed himself to be. He just wasn't.
He just bit off more than he could chew.
Yeah, absolutely.
He tried to do too much at once. And that's when Charlotte arrives and he takes advantage of her arrival. Oh, I've been sent to dispatch you to the river.
Yeah.
So that gets him out of that conversation for a little while.
Does that happen right then? Because I thought she saw Sydney before that.
Nope. Sydney has not arrived yet.
Okay.
They go to the river first.
Okay.
And she's watching, I love that scene where the youngest brother, whose name Arthur, where Arthur has the boy hanging from his arm. It's so cute with those kids. They've announced that the
Henry.
youngest is returning, but I'm wondering about the girls. But anyway, so that's when she discovers about the cricket match that's going to happen and that everybody will come to see it.
It's true. Yeah.
Everyone will be there. And she quickly runs off to hatch a new plot with Georgiana.
Mhm.
So
I
all
think,
that happens before Sydney returns.
yeah, that's right. I think it's kind of amazing how quickly Tom can turn from talking with the foreman and the man on the job to his expressions, his emotion, his desperation, then to Charlotte appears and instantly it's like, oh, click, different person. And then
Yeah.
his wife, and it's like a whole nother person. He's like, he's desperate at first, desperate, panic, trying to think of a scheme and a way out of this. Charlotte comes, it's all politeness. And then he goes down by the river where they're playing cricket and it's all arrogance. Like, nope, we're, of course, everyone's there. No one's going to miss it. And he just is almost like kind of full of himself of how good
So
how good they're gonna be.
self-confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
three visions of Tom very in quick succession. So that's
Oh yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Well, I'm sure it's just great relief when he sees Charlotte. He
Yeah.
just doesn't portray it that way.
Mm-hmm. I love
You know?
too Arthur and Diana in that scene when they're by the river, because Arthur
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with how Arthur's playing, and he's having fun and he's being a good uncle, and it's just he's running and he's playing cricket, and Arthur or Diana yells out, "Not too hard, Arthur! Save yourself for tomorrow!" Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
and then I wonder because when she just sat down, she wasn't sitting down for more than a second before she's like, "Excuse me." And you see
Yes.
the look on Mary's face. She knows something up. So I wonder, obviously, I understand Mary's not a real person. I understand that it's an actress playing a part. But I wonder what Mary would have thought she was doing, because Mary watched her for a while after she ran away, thinking.
Yeah.
You could tell by the look Kate Ashfield put on Mary's face.
Yes, that's right.
Tell that she was
Yeah,
thinking
and
something.
it's like, where is she going now?
Mhm. And concerned. She was concerned because I think Mary was smart enough to pick up that it was shrouded in secrecy.
Yes.
But if she can't tell me, then it must not be right. And she hasn't told me anything, so it can't be a good thing. So then they go to Georgiana and she says, I've hatched a plan.
Yes, that's
Everyone's
right.
going to be busy at the
She
cricket.
says, I know how we're going to do this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Georgiana writes this lovely note to Otis, which, the fallacy in their plan is they don't wait for an answer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but that makes the story more exciting.
I think that, and it's crazy because Georgiana's only thought is, he loves me so much, there's no way he's going to pass up this opportunity to meet me, which is probably true.
If he got the news.
Exactly. And I think that's as far, and that shows her maturity and Charlotte's immaturity as well. That's as far as your head goes. Not thinking, and I suppose the worst they were thinking is, well, if he doesn't show up, then I'll just be standing there. And that's
right. I mean, I'm sure it never in a million years occurs to them that something bad will happen to Georgiana.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, even when she admits that she needs Sydney because she needs somebody to manage her affairs, she still doesn't see that there could be any danger, that he's really protecting her.
Mm-hmm. And I think that in an earlier episode, she says, "A woman of my standing with fortune," how does she say it?
Has to be managed.
Has to be managed is how she says it. Yeah.
She says that when they meet on the cliffside, and then
in episode 2.
Charlotte befriends her, yes, in 2. Definitely.
And so that's as far as her thinking goes. And she says it so disdainfully, I must be managed. But even after she tries to escape on that carriage without money and they turn her away, even after all the mishaps she's had since then, not once does she ever think, I don't know enough to be on my own. Not once.
Right. Yeah. And both of them are very naive in this way.
Yeah. And Charlotte is just so full of righteous indignation that she's just going to plow ahead in any way that she feels will bring comfort rather than, and she even says that in this episode, I could not bear, she was in so much pain, I could not bear to see it.
Yes.
That's as far as her thing went. If someone's hurting, then it must be wrong. It must be corrected. I'll do it however it first pops into my head.
Yeah. And she saw herself as the go-between, she was going to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So now what you're after, almost, Sydney, Babington, and Crow arrive by coach.
Yeah.
And Crow cracks me up. It's like, I've come back here to the least hospitable place I'd ever want to go. And Sydney, you're paying for the first round. and he says, no, I have to go talk to Tom. And, Babington takes it all in stride and says, We'll see you at the match.
And I like when they're walking away and Crow says, what are you looking around for? You're looking for that denim woman? Oh, no, I've let that ship sail. Or however he says it. But I like that it immediately went from one to the other.
Actually, you know what? The scene you're talking about doesn't happen until episode 7.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Because he's proposing to her in this episode.
Right. Yep.
Maybe I should have done a rewatch yesterday. In my head, it's because I know the outfit he's wearing when he says that. And in the cricket, they're all wearing the same colors as the outfit when he says that.
Right.
That's why it's messed up in my head.
Right. This is when Babington reveals to Crow that in the tavern or bar or whatever they're calling it, he reveals to Crow that he's had this letter from Esther.
He finds it heartening.
Yes. That she had no shred of what did he say? Courtesy. No hint of courtesy or
oh man, I had to look up those exact words.
Did you look him up?
I'm looking him up right now.
Yeah,
I love his character. I really, really want to see him back.
Yeah, well, I'm not holding my breath.
I know.
He's on to so many other things.
They all are.
Yeah. Even, the pastor, what's his name?
Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin Eldred.
The actor's name. He's in at least one season of this other series I'm watching. And I've seen him in like 3 or 4 things. He shows up everywhere. Usually as some kind of pastor. So now one of the things did you find it?
No, I'm laughing because I found a line that we forgot to mention from when the first scene when Charlotte goes to Georgiana and she says, he must see me or he shall die from the wanting. And Charlotte says, I'm sure talk of his death is somewhat premature.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty early in the episode yet.
A little premature. So,
oh, wait. Also, when Tom is talking with Stringer, there's something else we missed about Stringer. When Fred says to him, I didn't know that you and Miss Haywood were friendly, James. And he says, we've had the odd, interesting conversation about architecture. She's very knowledgeable,
Yes. Yeah, we didn't discuss that scene.
But I think it would be remorse if he didn't talk about Stringer just a little bit from there.
Right. Next, I'm going to go on. Oh, I do want to say one thing about the hotel that they use. When you interviewed Ollie Blackburn, yeah. He said that his favorite place to film was in the tavern.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why they quit filming in there?
Why?
The woman who was the director for scenes 5, 6, and 7, no, 4, 5, and 6, in the Twitter interview thing, The Watch, she said that it was because there were bats in that building. It was a barn they had converted.
Mm-hmm.
Then the bats showed up, and because they're protected, they couldn't use it.
Oh.
Because at first I was like, bats? What kind of bats? And they're like, the flying bats. I'm like, oh. Yeah, so interesting, huh? That's why we didn't see any more scenes in there.
That's kind of sad, because that was a cool scene.
Yeah.
I did like that.
Yeah, the one in earlier in 3, or when they were singing, maybe that was in 2, when they were singing, it was even more fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And then, because it was 3 when he woke up in the tavern.
Yeah.
So 2 when they were singing in there.
Right.
So the reason we couldn't find that line is because right after Babington and Crow walk away, Sydney goes into the Trafalgar House and we see the conversation between him and Tom.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
And so one thing I like there is when he's like, everything work out? And he's like, no, I'm sorry. The situation is unchanged, Tom. And then Tom almost seems to like accept it and be okay with it. And then he says, at least I have your prowess on the cricket field. And once again, Sydney says, actually, you have Babington to thank for that. I'm here to help him in his time of romantic need.
Yeah, that's a great line.
So that Babington got them all to come back just because of this one letter from Esther,
Yes.
That wasn't even kind.
Yeah. He says, I did find it, or I
Well,
found a
we'll
section.
get to that in just a minute because I want to go over the scene with Sydney and Tom a little bit more
Okay,
first.
fine. Let's go back to that.
But if you found it, I'm going to stop looking for it.
Okay.
So then Tom almost seems to accept it, but then he goes right back into, I suppose you can't ask it one more time. Like, I don't think Tom even knows how to take no for an answer. I think for him, no is just always another negotiation point.
Right. A salesman, a typical salesman.
And I love that Tom says, or Sydney says, no, I can't. Tom, stop. I can't be drawn on the situation any longer. I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's up to Sydney to save him anyway.
Yeah.
So even though Sydney rightfully put his foot down, because Tom needed to start doing some of the work. Right. There's no reason, and you and I have talked about this before, there's no reason Tom couldn't have asked Babington. Babington's there. Sydney's given all the clues that Babington has a love interest in Sanditon.
Right.
There's no reason Tom couldn't have hit him up, but Tom refused to do any of the work regarding money.
Yeah, well, I guess he probably feels like he'd done it when he got Lady Denham to support it, but he's already exhausting all of his resources, obviously.
And I mean, when you run out of money, you got to do the work to get more.
Yep, that's right.
You have to.
Yep.
That's when we see Charlotte and Sydney run into each other, and she says, Mr. Parker, and I love that he just is kind of like, Miss Haywood. Now, every time he says her name now, instead of Miss Haywood, it's Miss Haywood. He's just so, yeah. And I don't
disappointed.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a sigh of complete disappointment, and it's a sigh of frustration that he was wrong yet again. And I love the line where she says, "Here for the cricket, I assume."
Yeah.
He says, "Always assumptions, Miss Hayward," or something like that.
Yet more assumptions.
That's what it is. Yeah, more assumptions, Miss Hayward. And that comes into place. So I love how much he gets out of that beating that dead horse.
Yeah.
Like he just keeps throwing it there.
Yeah. Yeah, he found something to hang on to. And then of course that's when Mary comes and greets him and gives him a hug. Obviously, she really likes him.
And she says, "I was not expecting to see you back so soon." And he says, "Believe me, neither was I."
Yeah. That Charlotte says that. Yeah.
No, that's Sydney that says that.
No, I know, but Charlotte's the one who said, "I didn't expect to see you back."
Yeah.
Because here she's hatched this plot,
mm-hmm.
and he could ruin it. At least that's what her thought is.
Yeah.
Because here Otis is supposed to come today when Sydney is here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, doesn't she even say? Oh no, that was in a different episode. And I think it's interesting to see that he says, "Believe me, neither was me," and even that he's not even angry so much as he's just so disappointed. Yeah. And then the way he leaves is, "Excuse me, I have to go see Mrs. Griffiths," and he goes over there right away to say, "I'm never coming back to this town ever again."
Right. Yeah. Like, I will not be returning.
He's running as far, or he attempts to run as far from Charlotte as he humanly can.
And yet it doesn't happen.
But
no, that's right. He's trying to get away.
Throughout this whole episode, he's displaying how much he's not trying to. He thinks that if I don't say anything, then she'll never know. But even Charlotte, when he looks at her that way on the beach, Charlotte's like, she gives him a double take, like, what is that? So he's not trying to display it, but he cannot help but display how much he appreciates her and how much he wants her. And so his only recourse is to run because he knows he won't be able to keep that in check.
Right.
Which is just so sad.
And he's so hurt. He's just so hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so then we go and we see Tom, before we even go back to the bar.
Yep.
We see Tom return to the men to make sure that they're going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
For the match.
Yep. And I can't believe what Tom says, that he has the audacity to say that to Stringer. When he said, "I need you to do your job now and pacify them." Like, you're going to tell this man who you haven't paid in weeks, "I need you to do your job now"? And the way he said it, almost like with a finger to the chest, it was so like, wow.
Well, it goes right along with um, uh, the elder Stringer, who and his attitude, you don't talk about your boss like that, that
Mhm.
sort of mentality. And Tom was trying to enforce that kind of
Yeah.
mentality. Oh, you work for me and you depend on me. And they did in that time. But yeah, it's appalling to us to hear that for
Yeah.
sure. And when they threatened to make, not show up for the match, and he's like, then everyone would know.
Yeah.
I mean, he says it in so many words.
And even Stringer says, well, that's what they're banking on, that
Yeah,
everyone will know.
right.
And I think Tom reverts to that because nothing else so far has shut Stringer up.
Right. And
Lying
then
to him hasn't shut him up.
so
Pacifying him hasn't shut him up.
right. So then he promises that he's going to pay him in a fortnight, which he has no means of.
No, none.
Not at this point.
And he's even just talked to Sydney, so he absolutely knows he's got nothing.
Yep. So then we're at the bar.
Well, first,
oh, wait a minute.
Stringer stands up to him and he says, no more, you can't break any more promises. We won't stand for it.
He does. Yeah, he's not backing down.
No. And the way Stringer says it, it's not even rude. It's not even going against the boss. It's just stating a fact that, listen, we can't. He's doesn't raise his voice at all. He even looks sad that he has to say it.
Right.
But it's just, listen, we've been here before. I recognize that tree, and it's just, we're not going to keep going in circles around here anymore.
I don't think unions were even a thing at this point.
They weren't. My interview with Rob Jarvis, we were talking about that a little bit.
Yeah. So it was pretty radical. It was pretty radical what he was saying.
Yeah. I think the other key point to point out here, though, too, is that as he walks away, isn't that when he finds the necklace? Or is that in the last episode?
Yes, then he goes, you're right. That's when he goes and buys that necklace. I think they show us the scene at the bar first, but
they show him walking towards the necklace as he walks away, I think, and then they don't do anything else with it. We only see him when Mary confronts him and says, "Is all your news?"
Right, he goes into the jewelers. That's all we see.
And that's it. And then it goes to the bar. All right, so you got the script part pulled up?
Yeah. And this is where he says that he plans on doing a little flirtation, and Crow is like, here? Well, not here, not in the bar, but here. And Crow has the best lines, I think. He says, you're uncommonly smitten with that woman. And heaven knows why. Though she's clever, I grant you. She knows it's the chase that keeps you dangling. And Babington says, well, you could not be more wrong, Crow. Miss Denham does not waste time with petty games. She is entirely herself at every turn. She has finally answered my letters, and the response is short and lacking in any courtesy whatsoever. I have taken great heart from it. Oh, good grief, man, says Crow. You are lost. I'm rather enjoying it, Babington says.
Short and lacking in any courtesy. I take great heart.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess, I mean, it is more in keeping with her, the way she is, than if she'd done something really flowery and you'd be going, did she even write it?
Yeah. I think, too, there's probably an aspect of, it's been Lady Denham he's been corresponding with, and Lady Denham wasn't hiding that it was her who he was talking to, so he knew. At first, I thought it was, are you really pretending to be Esther in these letters? But she made it clear that, it was her talking to Babington, and Babington knew it was her. But I think that the fact that Esther wrote him when she's never even deigned to respond to any of his letters before, showed him that she's listening to Lady Denham now.
Oh yeah, she has influence.
So this is the best news I've heard yet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So then we go. So this is when Sydney shows up at Lady Griffin, Mrs. Griffin's, not Lady, Mrs. Griffin's. And asks about Georgiana. Griffiths.
That's right.
Yep. And where is Georgiana? And I trust she hasn't slipped your net again.
One of my favorite things about the scene, that I don't know why, but it makes me smile every time, is when he comes in there, she's reading a book and eating a cookie, and then she drops them, and while she's like, But just the way she wipes it off of her while she continues to read, I don't know why. Something about that just tickles me. It's such a weirdly normal thing to do that I wonder if it was almost ad-libbed. But it just felt so. It's almost like when Mr. Collins would do something like that in Pride and Prejudice. Mrs. Griffiths, well, no, Mr. Hankins is the Mr. Collins of Sanditon. But Mrs. Griffiths is right up there with her silliness and her eccentricities and being so forceful and doing the right thing, even when it doesn't make any sense. Like the picnic, like that's a weird idea to have about a picnic. That just her brushing that off, it seems so normal that it just tickled me.
Right. And she has this certain image of what is right and wrong, what's proper and what's not proper, until somebody she sees as more important or higher, as we talked about, higher up, higher society contradicts it. And then she's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So,
and I think she gets that idea because it's the higher up that hire her to watch their wards and their kids and all that. So it's no, they all come to me.
Yeah. 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 So he is telling her that she's going to be entirely responsible for Georgiana.
And I'm sorry, is that really the best decision a guardian can do when the first thing he says to her is, I trust she hasn't slipped your net again.
Right.
Like, he's well aware that she kind of sucks at her job.
Yeah. Yeah. That Georgiana's kind of smarter than Miss Griffiths. Yeah, definitely. But he's more concerned about how he's feeling and what he wants to do. So he's still fiscally responsible. He's paid all of her debts, and paid ahead, paid for her for the rest of the season for Miss Lamb, but he's bailing physically.
Yeah. And I think it's very telling that when she asks him if he's going abroad, he says, well, first I'll be at Lord Babington's. There's a long pause. And he says, after that, another pause. I don't know.
Yeah.
Literally, his only objective is to run. That's it.
Not right. He hasn't really
any more beyond, I'm hurt. This is just going to get worse. I need to run. That's it. So he hasn't, while he's grown in other ways and Charlotte caused him to open up a little bit more, he hasn't grown much beyond that 16-year-old, 18-year-old boy who was hurt in love. He has not been able to overcome that by any means.
In terms of relationships and emotionally. Yeah, I agree. And it's real interesting. Then Georgiana comes in and greets Sydney.
Very kindly, I think.
What are you doing here?
Poor Mrs. Griffiths has to have a heart attack almost every time Georgiana speaks.
Especially in Sydney's presence.
Yes. And I love how she says her name. It's not a scolding so much as Georgiana. Like, how could you? This great man is here and you said something so rude. It just.
Yeah. And his response cracks me up. Seeing as you asked so politely, I'm here to play cricket. And because the Beaufort sisters are just, oh, that's so great. It'll be so much better since you're here.
I mean, to be fair, that's a true assessment right there.
Yes, it is.
But I think that's a nice nod to when he says, I'm here to play cricket. When Charlotte says to him, not a few minutes before, I assume you're here for the cricket.
Right.
When his exact words were, I'm here to play cricket.
Yeah. And she wasn't as rude as Georgiana. What are you doing here?
No. But it's just
much more polite.
Exactly. It's how he has to, at this point, because he's hurt, he has to disagree with everything Charlotte says. Because if he agrees with her even a little bit in any level on anything, he's going to be putty. And he doesn't want to be putty. He doesn't want, knowing how she's mocked him, knowing how she's hurt him, knowing in his mind, knowing that he doesn't really know the extent of it, but seeing what he now thinks he saw, any agreement with her whatsoever, even if it's the truth, as we see clearly here when he almost spouts back word for word what Charlotte said to him.
Right.
He can't have it. Can't do it.
Yes.
It's too dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Then they have the whole debate, well, I assume you don't want me to go. And he's like, well, I don't know what makes you think that. And I love this line where she says, Georgiana, as long as you do exactly as Mrs. Griffin says, you can do anything you like. And hers line, this is the best line she has the whole show. Am I meant to thank you for that contradiction?
Yes, you are. Because honestly, if you were my kid, you'd probably still be up in your room grounded right now. So I think that's a pretty nice concession.
Yeah. Yeah, she speaks her mind.
But she doesn't do it wisely.
No.
Her only goal, because she's so angry, she's so immature, her only goal is to get a rise out of Sydney. That's it. She's so angry, she wants him to be angry.
She has a full-on teenage mind.
Yeah. Even when she says before that, because you keep me locked up like some criminal, my only crime is love. Like, do you, what? There can't be, and she knows him too well to know that that's actually going to do anything.
Right.
So her only goal is to get him angry because she's angry, and misery wants company, and she wants him to be miserable if she's going to be miserable. So she's going to make his life hard.
Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah. And again, it just shows you her naivety about the world. I mean, my crime is love. Well, that could be a crime.
Yeah.
Given the context.
Exactly. But, and I love Sydney's line where he says, the sea air might even restore your good humor.
Yeah.
And I think he's finally realized, because I think before this would have worked, but I think even though he's mad at Charlotte, he's hurt by Charlotte, he's shutting Charlotte out, I think he's grown since meeting her enough to know that, okay, this is what Georgiana wants. I'm not going to give it to her. She's going to be petty and insolent. Then I'm going to be politely sarcastic. So he's learned some tactics there. And I think that right there shows his growth, because even remember back in the earlier scene when she's complaining about having to go to the pineapple luncheon in episode 2, and he sighs and he's checking his watch and he's irritated and he doesn't want to be there. And this time he's just annoyingly cordial to Georgiana, not annoying to us, but annoyingly cordial for Georgiana.
And she doesn't know yet that he plans on leaving.
No,
and we know where that goes, but anyway. Yeah. So let's get to the cricket match.
Yes. I like that she's so preoccupied. She just is holding the plate of sandwiches.
Yeah. And she's keeping an eye on Sydney.
Well, he wasn't coming right away, because when Mary said, or Diana says that, is it Diana or Mary who says that to her? You can put the sandwiches.
It's Mary. Mary says, you've been guarding that plate for the past 5 minutes.
Well, when she says that, Charlotte's actually looking down at the plate.
No, that's true.
And then she says, oh, she puts it down, but then she looks up as she puts it down, and then she sees Sydney.
She doesn't even put it down. She gives it to Arthur.
That's right. Arthur's face. He's so excited to get this plate of sandwiches. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Is there anything to not love about Arthur? I mean, really.
No, I love Arthur.
He's just so great. Oh, because she says, do help yourself, Mr. Parker.
Yes.
He's like, right. Oh, okay, don't mind if I do.
Yeah, and you hand me a whole plate full of sandwiches. It looked like his own personal plate.
So she runs out ahead of Sydney, and it's not at all nonchalant. Like she's
trying to get away.
Escaping him.
Right, right. But they're clearly keeping an eye on each other.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting is that as she runs by him, he kind of stops to watch her go, but he almost has a look on his face like, really? You're going to run from me? But the look on his face as he watches her walk away is almost like in the scene where she sees him come out of the water, it's, so she feels a little bit the way I feel, which means she likes me enough to avoid me. So I think there's still that bit of.
Well, and maybe he's wondering, what is she up to? And we know she's up to something.
I don't think he sees it yet because he has no idea.
No, you're right. He's clueless about this.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're right. It's all about his emotions around her but she is trying to avoid him because of what she's up to.
Mm-hmm. And because I think she just in general wants to avoid him because they had the fight and she's mad at him. And
right. That's right. And so this is when Miss Griffith and the Beaufort sisters and Miss Lamb all arrive, and Charlotte starts visiting with Georgiana, but here they are. I mean, just the height of irony. She would not allow them to go to a picnic. the episode before, and now she's taking all these ladies to sit on the ground.
Yep.
That was just so what was her word? Unseemly or something like that. And eat.
And there are tables and chairs there.
Yeah.
Why didn't you sit on a table or a chair?
Yep. They're sitting on the dunes.
I wonder if part of it is she's still associating with Tom and Mary went on a picnic, even though that's not really what happened. I wonder if part of her, because Mrs. Griffiths is a silly character. So I wonder if part of her is still remembering, oh no, Georgiana went on a picnic with Tom and Mary, even though it never happened.
Yeah. I've seen that actress in a few more shows too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ruth. No, it's not Ruth Kearney. It's I feel like her name is Ruth though.
Yeah, I'm just not remembering right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, she played a despicable character in one of them. So she's not despicable in this. She's just gullible.
Yeah, exactly. And she's silly. She genuinely is a silly character. She's only swayed by the words and actions of the elite. I love that Georgiana immediately is like, my despicable guardian is here. Like she can't even attempt, because she's so angry and she's so spiteful at this moment. She can't even pretend that Sydney's doing anything but protecting her. Can't even pretend.
Nope.
Of course she's hurt. Her love was taken away. I get it.
No, it's not Charlotte that says that. It's Georgiana.
Yeah, did I say Charlotte? I meant Georgiana.
Oh, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got confused. Yeah, you're right. She feels like, because he sent Otis away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mixed that up.
And that shows her level of immaturity, because that's literally the only thing he's done wrong, other than take her from Antigua and then separate her.
Well, and moved her to Sanditon instead of being in London. But yes.
But that was a separation from Otis. That's the only reason he moved her.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, and then it gave him it was a chance for him to do some support for Tom.
Yeah. I think that's why he chose Sanditon over any other place. Yeah, but I think the basis of it was,
the motivation was to get her away from Otis, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And so this is, obviously we hear that part where Mrs. Griffith's like, what a lot of whispering. I need to read that book. I really must read this book. But this is one of my favorite things. And I think that I'm skipping past the conversation with Reverend Hankins, because maybe we shouldn't. No, Reverend Hankins and Mrs. Griffiths are like a match made in heaven. We're so ridiculously perfect for each other. It's not even funny. And then he says, I will be an umpire. And she's like, very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, she's very impressed with him. And I mean, she liked that despicable sermon he gave. And, she's just, right. She's very impressed with him. It's interesting that he as a character is returning to Sanditon.
Sanditon's priest or
preacher.
Pastor.
He'd be,
what are they called then? Vicar.
Yeah. But it's interesting because as far as we know, Mrs. Griffiths is not returning. Yeah. She doesn't have the wards, so why would she? But
well, we discussed this again on the live, that I think that I don't think we have a full cast list yet.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, it's entirely possible that they'll come back for a episode or two or something.
Even if it's season 3 and not season 2, I mean, that's possible too.
Right, but we know the Beaufort sisters, the gals who played the Beaufort sisters, are not returning. And Georgiana, I don't know where she's going to be, but I don't think she's going to be in Miss Griffith's house.
Yeah, I think she's going to have to be. That might be where, because there was another woman, I think it's Sally McDade, I think we talked about in our live, has just been hired on. We don't know her character's name yet, but we just saw that she was hired on as a cast member. So she might be the new companion.
Could be.
Because, I mean, clearly Sydney has to find a companion that's more competent than the last, so he doesn't have to ever show his face in Sanditon.
Right. The most interesting thing to me will be what they do with his story.
And I don't think they're going to kill him off.
No, I doubt if they will. At least not in episode 2. I mean, and series 2, I mean.
I don't think they will at all. I think there's too much ground for keeping him. And honestly, we all love Sydney. We don't want to see him die.
Nope, that's right.
We don't want to see him with Eliza either.
It'll still be interesting to see what excuse they have for him not being there,
I think Eliza will be the excuse.
Oh, probably, yeah.
But I think too that he's gonna have, not that because there's been a lot of comparisons from him to Willoughby, but I don't think that's accurate.
No.
I think that Willoughby acted to save himself. Sidney acted to save his entire family. So there's
right.
there's
I
a
see
difference
no
there. But
similarity between them at all.
where I see the similarity in how I think their stories are going to end. Willoughby ended up married to a woman he did not love because she was wealthy. Sidney's going to end up married to a woman he does not love because she is wealthy. I think that's going to be the only similar. I think he's just going to have a Willoughby ending.
Yeah, maybe. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how they reveal the story to us. You know,
I think we'll get it in bits and pieces throughout the next 2 seasons. I don't think we'll get it all in one lump sum.
It's so they only went for 9 months. I guess that's so that they can have more control over Georgiana.
Well, I'm glad and I'm not glad about that.
Because the summer before she becomes of age is what they said.
Yeah. So the reason I am glad is because I would hate to miss out on all of her growth. And I think starting where they start, we're going to see her improved already because Sydney's going to be out of the picture. But I think that we're actually going to be able to watch her go from completely immature, naive to where she's going to end up. And I think season 3 will probably largely focus, as it pertains to her character, I think will largely focus on who she is now and moving forward as a mature adult who actually understands that not everyone's out to get her, that, you know, you need to let the ones who love you. But I think that if we said it in 2 years, we would miss all that, because in 2 years, I would expect Georgiana to be solid.
Right. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. But there was someone who said that when Jack Fox shared his script, they could see that it took place in Antigua and Sanditon and Bristol, rather.
I read that. I didn't really see that, but that's.
So I think that that might be the kickstart to her growing. And I'm glad we get to see that. So, but I think that as we see Reverend Hankins, I think this scene right here is pretty telling. I mean, obviously we see after that sermon that nobody who didn't fawn over him could like there's no way. If you're a rational thinking person, there's no way you enjoy that sermon. Even Mary wouldn't say it outright. She hated that sermon. That's why she asked Charlotte, what do you think about that? Because she knew Charlotte would say what she wanted to say, but wouldn't say.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then we see them on the banks when they're painting and she's fawning over him. And then just all these other aspects where she's fawning over him. And I wonder how much of it is he's a man who has a profession, who is solid because he has this profession that's not going anywhere. And he's paying attention to her. I wonder how much of her fawning over him is genuinely because she really, truly likes him, or how much of it is the potential there is there to get her out of the situation.
And you know, they're both single and close in age.
Exactly. That's it.
So yeah, I think that's 90% of it.
So right after that is one of my favorite nonverbal scenes. There's my two favorite nonverbal scenes are in this episode. Mm-hmm. The first one, now, when I had this wedding that I was doing back in May, and because I made the invitations myself and I packaged the invitations myself for this couple. And so while I'm doing that, I just had Sanditon in the background and I would just keep looking up as I'm folding invitations. And I just caught, and I'd never caught it before, the sight of Sidney as he's biting his cigarette, staring over the top of his eyelids at Charlotte. And I remember tweeting out, everyone talks about the episode 6 dance scene. Can we please talk about the smolder of this look on his face right here? Because it's so intense. And I think that might be the one where Charlotte's like, what is that? So Charlotte, even Rose Williams put that into Charlotte's character, that she even responded to the look on Sidney's face right then, because it was like he was exposing his teeth as he bit into the cigarette and was just staring at her over his eyelids. Very sultry, very sulky.
And this look you're talking about is after she just got through talking to Stringer. Right?
Nope, it's not that one yet.
Which one?
Is right after Reverend Hankins and Mrs. Griffiths greet each other, and then as they're walking away, as Charlotte files past Sidney, he's just staring at her over his eyelids.
Oh yeah, that one, yeah. And again, he's staring at her when she's talking to Stringer. I mean, it's both of those.
That's my other favorite one.
And she kind of backs up away from Stringer, and he's right there, there. And then she says, well, good luck to you. And
though I don't imagine
you don't think you need it. And he's like, yeah, more assumptions. Yeah.
I just love them.
The dialogue is so good.
Yeah. So she walks with him over to, or walks with Georgiana, not him. She walks with Georgiana over to the sands, and then she goes and she chats with Mr. Stringer. And I just started looking something up as I was talking, and I got confused for a minute. So what I love about that is that Stringer is so obvious in his feelings for her. He outright says, when she says, "You have a lot of admirers," he says,
I hope you're one
of them. Charlotte, how did you not pick up on that? She's so, and the reason is she's so consumed with Sydney Parker.
Right.
If he did, but Sydney heard it. Sydney recognized what he was doing, and Sydney recognized absolutely what he was, because that's when you see Sydney looking out of the corner of his eye at them as they're having that conversation. And when Charlotte turns around, it's very obvious that he looks away from them and looks anywhere else.
Right. Well, you know what we missed?
What?
Was we missed when they're waiting for the workmen to arrive. Yes, that's when they're, waiting, and Sydney's like, "Tom, it's 2:00 and they're late." And he's like, "Well, they probably were delayed on the site." And Sydney's like, "Are we going to have to, what's going to happen?" And then of course, another time when Crow has a great line, about pursuing. Yeah, well, actually, in this case, he says, "Well, let's, we'll go drink," or I can't remember exactly what he says. I guess even before that, I'm really butchering this. Even before that, the men are all coming up to Tom, and Tom says to Crow, "Are you drunk?" And he says, "No more than usual."
I like the way Tom says it, though. He's like, "Are you drunk?" Like, he's just so exasperated that, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And then Lady Denham arrives. He goes over and talks to Lady Denham. Another delay in waiting for these men to arrive. And then Mary comes to Tom and says, "What's going on? We're going to run out of sandwiches. Why the delay?" And he's like, they'll come. Anyway, I think that's also when Lady Babington is sitting there, and Lady Babington, Lord Babington goes over and greets Lady Denham and Clara and Esther in that order.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to point out, though, before we get into that scene, because I have things to say about that scene.
Okay.
But when he's like, "Oh, is it off then?" And Tom says, no, it's not off. Arthur says, "Oh, that's a relief. I wouldn't like to think I've done all that exercise for nothing."
Another great Arthur line. Yeah.
And he pats his stomach as he says it. And Edward is the only one who doesn't laugh.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know that any of them really laugh. I think Sydney just kind of smirks and nods his head. And I think Crow and Babington laugh, but Edward just looks so annoyed. Really, man? He's so irritated by him.
Yeah. Okay, on to Miss Denham and Babington's greeting.
Yes. So I'm trying, there's something specifically, because it's what she says, where Lady Denham says to her, "He's coming, sit straight, smile." No, don't smile, you'll confuse him.
Because of the kind of smile she was.
Well, I think also Lady Denham has never really seen Esther smile. Like, it's such a confusing thing. Like, what is wrong with your face? My kids watch the show Home. It's that movie. And one of the lines of, he says, "What is the purpose of your face?" And that's what I think every time she says that. Don't smile. Don't do that. But I like that when he says, he says, "Miss Denham, I'm pleased to see you here today." And she said, "I had no idea." He said, "I had no idea you were such a cricket enthusiast." "I'm not," she says. Yeah. Like, she gives him nothing. And Lady Denham says, "Sadly, she lacks my wit."
Right.
I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's when she says, "Yes, delighted." Babington shows what he's made of. And I think this is the turn for him and Esther, because he says, that makes 3 of us then. Fully acknowledging that Lady Denham is very manipulating the situation. That he lets Esther know right then by saying, well, that makes 3 of us then. He lets her know how funny he thinks the situation is, that your aunt is pulling some strings here. And I think that kind of sparked Esther to kind of see, I don't think it was full yet, but I think it started her on the way to seeing how well they could actually be matched.
Yes. Yeah. She's torn in different directions. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think with Babington is the only one that she actually has to fight feelings for.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. She has to fight loving how paid attention to she is by him.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a point at which we get some clue that Lady Denham is not feeling well.
Yeah, when she asked for her fan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it is slightly later.
Yeah.
She asked for a fan, and I'm glad someone considers my welfare when Clara hands her the fan.
Yeah, because right then you kind of think it's just she's so irritated she's boiling.
Right. Yeah, we don't really think she's ill at this point.
I do love the line where he says, Babington says, she's the wittiest woman I've ever met, and Crow says, then you're moving in the wrong circles.
Yeah, that's right. That happens right here when he walks away from her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was butchering this earlier, but that's when Crow says there's no point in wasting the entire afternoon, back to the bar. And then Babington has a really great line, from one gentleman's pursuit to another.
Yeah. And so, I do right after that is when they all come in, right? Crow is starting to walk away and the team comes in. But I think that there was obviously a strategy to them being late, obviously.
Oh yeah, they wanted to get everybody's attention.
Mm-hmm. And they really, really, really wanted to make Tom sweat.
Yes, and they did that.
But honestly, I think Stringer had to do a lot of compromising with them, a lot of mediating with them, because I think the workers wanted to say, no, absolutely not, we're not going. And I think it was probably James Stringer's level head that said, listen, you can still show up late, make him think you're not going to go and have the same effect. People are going to wonder. Tom's going to stress out. He's going to freak out. He's going to panic. And if we show up, we'll still show what kind of people we are.
Right.
So I feel like that it's probably something that was in Stringer's wheelhouse, that he had to mediate and talk them down from the extreme that they wanted to do, which is so crazy that that's an extreme, and find a middle ground where they can still prove their point, but still show Tom, listen, we're holding more power than you realize.
Right. Well, we have a long ways to go in this episode.
I think no, because like a lot of it is the game playing from here until Georgiana's taken.
Yeah.
But I do like Fred here when he's like, what's the prize for winning? Fred is, and when he says it and he shakes his hand, he's looking him right in the eye. There is it is an intentional stare down of
he's definitely challenging him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's definitely tell me to my face. So this is another part where when they start to bat, Stringer's gonna go first. When Charlotte starts cheering for him, and Sydney is the bowler. Sydney's bowling first, and he stops and he watches Stringer for a second, and then he stares at Charlotte for a while, and then he goes to throw the ball. He does that the first 2 times he goes up to pitch,
and he gives up hits both times.
Yep. Yes, he does.
Scores, actually, yeah.
And then when I think that we could talk about the stuff that happens in between, but it's mostly just gameplay. It's mostly just seeing Georgiana wait. It's seeing Mrs. Griffiths get closer. It's just the antics of a game.
And then also, prior to the game starting, Esther walks away from out on the sand, and Lord Babington sets himself up next to her.
Yeah. And I think that's partly why, because she says, I think part of it is that she hears what Esther said, or Edward said, you're going to have to find a husband and me a wife. But she's also hearing what Lady Denham is saying, that you have to try harder in this courtship. You can't just let him go. And it was an earnest thing from Lady Denham. It wasn't so much you have to do this, you must obey me. It was, Esther, you can't let this go. It was almost like a pleading for her. But I think that compiled with Babington saying, well, that makes 3 of us, and his showing his wit. I think that Esther was like, okay, All right,
Also,
you're right.
I think, and even more than that, I think she wanted to get away from Clara.
Yeah, that's right. Because didn't
I
she
really
say,
do.
she said, how did she word it? I'd rather think you favored a different sort of man. I
Yes.
imagine you'd favor a different sort of man, because then Esther comes back with, you should be careful where your imagination leads.
Takes you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And then she's like, I'm getting away from her. And so she walks out, and she doesn't obviously object to Babington coming out there to hang out by her. But yeah.
Well, that's her goal, is that he comes out to hang by her. That's why she did it. That's why she walked right past. She could have gone anywhere else. She could have gone the other way and not gone on the ball field. But she chose to go on the ball. Her goal was to get Babington next to her, because I think she wanted to talk to Babington. At that point, I think she was interested enough, and I think she was starting to see cracks in Edward enough that she wanted to see him alone. She wanted to see Babington alone, to see what he's made of.
Right. Yeah.
So we have the gameplay, we have all the stuff that goes on, we have those little conversations that they are important, but for the sake of time, we're not going to go too in depth on those.
Right.
Where I really want to jump to is when it hits its wicket, right? I don't know the rules of cricket. But I remember him saying, it's leg before wicket. It's leg before wicket. We win. I just remember Leo Suter shouting that.
Right. He thought he was out. And I've watched that replay several times, and I can't really tell.
It looked to me like it was out, but what Tom said also happened. So, I mean,
it hit his leg, but quite a ways from the wicket. So,
yeah. So, he calls her to be out. The workmen obviously think that because Tom has screwed them over so many times. So it's easy to say, well, it's just a game. It's just cricket. But this game proved the mettle of two different classes of people. And the workers were so fed up with the townsmen and with Tom and the people who employed them. I mean, I think you can't even call them employing them if you're not paying them. Commanding them, ordering them, controlling them.
He had been paying them earlier, but he obviously had run out of money.
Weeks he hadn't paid them. And so it's the whole point of this match was to show the kind of people they were, to show what they were made of. And I think at this point, when they saw Tom screwing them over again, after he had just made all these promises, he couldn't even let this one thing go that they were calling, this is what it is. Tensions just overboiled so much of, I'm sick of you pretending who you are.
Yeah. But all that doesn't come out until they speak like that to him. And then Sydney speaks up for his brother and says, you don't speak to my brother like that. And they defend themselves and say, well, he hasn't paid us. Yeah.
And really, it's funny because James Stringer is the leader of them, is the one who says it. And everyone else just stares. Before that, Fred just keeps throwing things out at Tom without actually saying why he feels that way. Because Fred's like, oh, your sort always cheat. You always do that. You always look out for yourself. No care about anybody but yourself. And that's why Sydney intervenes. So even Fred would not say what the real problem was. I think
Stringer had to say it.
Mm-hmm. And even that's when even Tom turns on Sydney a little bit. Like, what do you care? Why are you here? What do you care if I leave?
Right. Because he hasn't solved his problem for him.
Exactly. And how selfish of a response is that?
Yeah.
And we also see it's earlier in this episode when Tom presents Mary with that necklace, right?
Yes.
Which we didn't cover, when she goes up to him and says, was your meeting with Sydney everything you hoped it would be? And he says,
actually, wasn't that the end of the previous episode? No, it wasn't. Well, I don't know.
No, because in this one he says, yes, my dear. In fact, Sydney has been able to work miracles, wonders. And then he gives her that.
Yeah, earlier in the episode. Yeah.
And that's right after Sydney leaves to go to Mrs. Griffith's.
Right.
That's right after Sydney said, Tom, no more. And then Tom says, even better than we thought. Like, what?
And he says a gift flat out lying.
Yeah. And so when he gives her that, he says it's a promise of things to come. And so when Mary is sitting there hearing all this, she thinks, you knew, you have known, you lie to me over and over again, and you mask it with promising these things you can never attain. And I'm not going to go too much detail about this because we talk about this when we talk about Charlotte and Tom, or Mary and Tom together.
Right.
But there's so much pain in her voice and in her face. I mean, when she hears that Tom has not paid them for weeks, and she knows she's got this glittery, expensive thing on her neck that all the workers can see. And I think she is so ashamed in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
That these people are suffering.
Right.
She's rewarded.
And so she is totally embarrassed and follows him home.
Even Diana says, "Oh, Mary," and Mary can't take it. She just leaves.
Yeah, and then she throws that necklace at him.
I can't believe how Tom. I mean, I can because he's a desperate man. He's at this point he has to be delusional or he's going to fall apart. And that's why he says, you're making too much of it, Mary. It's just tempers got frayed. It's hot. That's all it was. No. And even that's when Mary finally, she snaps, stop lying to yourself, Tom, and stop lying to me. And the look on Tom's face when she says that, it's like she broke through his delusion for the first time and he's devastated.
Right. No, I agree. I think you're exactly right about what happened there. Yeah. They, all of a sudden another secret comes out.
Yeah. And it's one that she's known has been brewing for a while. And that's why she kept saying all those episodes, I wish you talked to me. I hope you talk to me. Hey, is there anything wrong? Hey, I'll help you. Like she said it in almost every episode. And to find out that he still didn't give in, it's like, what is wrong with you? I've been here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And so Charlotte goes to play. She impresses Sydney. She impresses Stringer. She impresses all the dudes. I love that it's Reverend Hankins when he's like, isn't this a gentleman's sport, Miss Haywood?
Right. And the best line for Crow is, it's obviously more
sounds infinitely better than Sanditon.
Yes, that's what he says. Infinitely, is it better? It's not better. It's like
more interesting.
Yeah, infinitely more interesting than Sanditon. Yeah.
Because she says, women play cricket in Willingdon all the time, Reverend. Sounds infinitely more interesting than Sanditon. I do like, too, that when Tom goes up to bat, he hands Edward his hat. And Edward, if you watch Jack Fox's face there, is so great. And it actually makes the other, I think it was an ad-libbed thing, because he grabs it, he kind of bares his teeth, and he goes, and he like whips it out of Tom's hand. And then the three guys around him just start laughing. So I don't think that was supposed to happen, but he just begrudgingly like snatches it out of Tom's hand as he hands it to him. And I thought that was a great scene.
It was. Yeah, I remember that scene. It's good.
Now, I think in the midst of this, though, there's another important thing that happens, right? Babington and Esther walk off.
Right. They go for a short ride, which he had said, give me a chance to prove that I'm not strutting peacock, is what she had called him.
And Edward watches them the whole way. Even to the point where he leans backward at an angle to watch them go. And that's when Clara goes up to him. And she says, your aunt wants me to tell you that she is unwell and needs to go home. And he says something like, what's that to me?
Yeah. Oh, should I tell her that?
So I think the biggest thing here is that Clara sits down and tells him, I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to find that.
She says, what she says is that your aunt, that basically she's implying in so many words that Esther and Babington are together. She'll marry her off. Your aunt will marry her off to Lord Babington, and then it will just be between you and me, your aunt's inheritance. And who do you think you will win? And then she says, I wonder who will win. And then she says, well, no, I don't. I don't wonder.
Yeah. But when she first goes over there, she says, I'd offer myself as company, but I have to leave. So it's all her saying, hey, we don't have that's the way I took it is, we don't have to be enemies. We could work out some kind of arrangement here, Edward. And I think she's doing the same thing Edward's doing. I think Edward kind of starts to flirt with her and befriend her in a weird friendship. I think a friendship that only the two of them understand, because they're always this way. They're always trying to find the angle, I think, is what Edward and Clara both do. So as much as Edward was trying to solidify a relationship in case Lady Denham gave her the inheritance, I think she's trying to do the same thing. I think she's doing two things like Edward is. I think she's trying to emote this confidence of, that inheritance is mine. I'm the better choice. It's going to come to me, which kind of makes him dependent on her. But at the same time, she's saying things like, I'd offer myself this company. You know, Esther's going to leave you someday and you're going to be all by yourself.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I think she's setting up something so that if Edward gets the inheritance, she has Edward.
Right. Right.
So it's funny how they're both doing the same thing and they're both looking at the same angle without even realizing that they're both doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we see Esther and Lord Babington go to the falls and have this walk and
I love it.
this conversation. I don't know how much you want to get into the conversation.
We don't have to read the script, but let's talk about the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So he says that they talked about pretense, and he says if we're going to live a life full of, I doubt there are many among us who can say that they've lived a life.
That was Esther.
That was Esther, right? And then he says, well, then surely if we're to lead a better life, we're honor bound to free ourselves from such a burden. And then she's like, well, you amaze me, Lord Babington, you know. And then she kind of says, really gets him when she says, I'm starting to find you slightly better company. And he laughs, you know. It's a great line. And then if not much goes on before he says, I'm all at sea. You've conjured up all these feelings in me.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, well, we should go back. It's getting cold. And she's like, I can't go back. I'm compelled to go forward. And that's when he asked her to be his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Do me the honor of becoming my wife. And she thinks it's a joke at first.
I think the sweetest part about that is that, or maybe the saddest part rather, when he says all pretense aside, and she actually sees that he's putting all pretense aside and laying himself out there. I don't think she's ever been with someone who is wholly genuine. Right. Esther is always working an angle. Clara, always working an angle. Lady Denham, always trying to control. Even when she wrote the letter to Babington, it was a secret until it was a done deal. And then it was, okay, this is what's happening. So I don't think she's ever truly, and I think that's why she's so skeptical of everyone else. She's never been around anyone who's wholly genuine. And for him to genuinely tell her what her worth is, that, you know, right. I value, I've never met someone as extraordinary as you. Certainly Edward doesn't let her think that.
No.
Edward basically makes her think, I'm the best you're going to get, kid. You know, it's without saying that, that's the pretense that Edward gives her. But Babington, who is this lord, who is a peer of the realm, who has money, who is in the upper echelons of society, is telling this girl who's flat out broke, who has almost no connections, you are extraordinary. Right. And Edward's next response is,
he sees her. Right. And he sees her for who she is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And values her for who she is as a person.
Yeah. And her instinct is to say, it's getting cold, we should leave. She's so overwhelmed with emotion in a way that she has never been overwhelmed. And that's the saddest part about this in the next scene with Edward. Is I think for the very first time ever in her life, she's overcome with an emotion for another human being. With Edward, it's been devotion to Edward. It's been servitude almost to Edward. It's been chasing after Edward, but it's never been, I feel so loved. It's never been a serious thing of, I could really be happy here. I don't think it's ever been about happiness. I think it's always been, love must be turmoil. Love must feel like this.
And he puts short shrift on the possibility. Mm-hmm. He manipulates her back into staying with him.
Oh, that makes me so mad.
That's the bottom line.
It's so sad that she just, because I think that she's starting to see, she even says that to Edward. And I know we're jumping ahead a little bit to the next scene, but I think we need to talk about these two together. She even says to Edward,
that's fine, I'm with you.
He makes me laugh. I've forgotten what that feels like. How heartbreaking of a line is that? I've forgotten what it felt like to laugh. which is I've forgotten what it felt like to be happy. To her, love is
Right.
supposed to be twisted and controlling and turmoil and fear. And Babington is showing her something else, but it's Edward who is like, well, it's only because I haven't give all of myself to you. So let me give you a little more of myself. And that look on his
Right.
face over her shoulder after he kisses her makes me want to punch. It's the only time in the whole series that I actually cannot stand Edward Denham. Truly cannot stand him.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Okay. So we're back at the match. It's just ended. And they've won because Stringer was kind to her and pitched the ball to her.
Thank you for going easy on me.
They've won. Yeah. And they're all happy and congratulating each other. And then Mrs. Griffiths comes up to her and says, I've lost her.
Well, right before that, though, right before Miss Griffith comes there, when Charlotte says, "Is that a smile I detected?" And he says, "Oh, I doubt it." She talks to Mr. Stringer. So, but they had that little exchange. So Charlotte smiles at her for the first time. And after that, when I forget, what does he say to her? But she says, "Thank you, Mr. Parker." Yeah, when he says, "Well done, Miss Haywood." And then she says, "Thank you, Mr. Parker." They're both like staring at each other with both the smiles on their faces.
When they get interrupted, right?
So this is like episode 4. This scene is what episode 4 must be to you. Of really, you were so close, and it just got ripped away again. And I think the other thing that we need to, before she leaves, Fred looks at Stringer and says, "If you don't tell her, how will she ever know?"
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, she should know. But things are different then.
He's otherwise occupied.
Yeah. So everyone goes to search for Esther. We already talked about the scene with Edward and Esther. Obviously, Edward convinces her to stay with him. I do think it's when he's like, "Who were you with?" And she says, "I was with Babington." You know I was.
Right.
So she says, "Why are you pretending?" Which is all Edward does. So, I mean, we're not going to talk that much more about that because we already talked about that. I want to get into the scene at Mrs. Griffith's house.
Right.
When she's missing. And we talked about this in the Sydney Charlotte episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how he's obviously panicking. Absolute panic. Can't find Georgiana anywhere. And Charlotte comes running up there. And even before that, when Charlotte goes running off on her own before Sydney leaves, she goes to search for Georgiana every place that she might. She goes to the spot, obviously, they prearranged. But she goes to every spot she possibly can think of before she goes to Sydney. She did not want to go back to Sydney and say, "This is my fault. I lost her."
Yeah, that's right.
But out of love and protection of Georgiana, she did anyway. I mean, she didn't want to incur his wrath, but she did anyway. And I love when she comes in there, Sydney's almost relieved that she's there. Sydney's almost relieved that Charlotte is back in his presence and can calm him, can be a balm to him, until Stringer comes in and says she was with a man. And she says, "Was he black?"
Yeah, I know.
Sydney instantly stares at her like, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's sad for me that scene where they're gazing at each other happily is broken up by Georgiana having run off. But then also the scene where she comes back in and he's relieved to see her, to cast his burdens on her so that they could share together. Then he starts to figure out, "What have you done?" And it's broken again.
Right.
Like it's just, we should have known there would be a Sid lap because every time they get close, there's something that tears it away.
Yep.
And Theo James, perfect in that scene.
And the director said they replayed it several times, tried it different ways.
Yeah. Really powerful when he screams it.
Yeah. So obviously he leaves very angrily, and she decides she's going to go after Georgiana.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, asks for the carriage, and Mary says no, and then she leaves.
Before that, though, Babington and Esther. She asked Babington to come back to the house, and Babington goes out there, and he says, "This is it, then, isn't it?" She says, "I'm afraid it is."
Yeah.
And it kills me because clearly Esther does not want to tell him no.
Right.
It's clear as day.
Yeah.
And poor Babington he's taken all the rejection he can. He's finally, I think he thought that there was always a chance, and then he bared himself and she rejected him. And I think that was kind of like a final, nope, this is an actual rejection. Then nothing I do will be enough for this woman. And it makes me so sad when he doesn't even say anything, he just turns and walks away.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's the moment that Esther turns to watch him.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time that Esther looks at him full on, is to his back. And that makes me so sad for her. So sad. Ugh, I hate that.
But we know her story ends up better.
Yes. But still there's pain, and that's a bummer.
Yep.
So then we get to the scene where she asks about the carriage. Yep. But I think it's indicative of Mary's position. How she, because when she's sitting there, her head is in her hand when she's talking about Tom, and her eyes are closed, and she's just in so much pain. She knows exactly where Tom has gone because she made him go. And when she shouts out, "You cannot trust Tom. He cannot be counted on right now." And that's the most angry that you see Mary the entire show.
Right.
She's just in so much pain.
Oh yeah, definitely. And Charlotte leaves anyway, and
at least she left a note.
Yep. And they leave us on the way to London at the end of this episode.
Right before she leaves the note, though, we see Esther has to tell Lady Denham, "I told him no."
Right.
And that's when Lady Denham really gets sick.
Yeah.
And you see, this is the first, you see an indication of it in the cricket match when she says, "Esther, you have to work harder. You have to give more of yourself." You kind of see her actually looking out for the benefit of Esther rather than herself. And then you see it here when she says, "What does love have to do with anything? Marriage is a business arrangement. Do you think I'm married for love?" And then she says, "You have the Denham name, but a name won't see you through without a dowry." It's all about, don't you understand, Esther? You are not going to make it without this. You have to go forward with this. And it shows a lot of who Esther is when Lady Denham collapses. And
she goes to her right away.
Right away. And then yells at the help me. And the way she says that, "What is wrong with you? Help me. This woman is sick."
Yeah.
And then we end with Charlotte going to London. So there's a lot of brokenness in this episode.
Yes, there is.
A lot of brokenness. We see Tom and Mary broken. We see another blow to Sydney and Charlotte. Georgiana obviously makes some bad missteps. Esther and Babington, obviously Babington is broken, and Esther is broken by having to say no to him as well. Then there's Edward, who realizes he's losing her, and in a separate way, he breaks them because he forces her to say no when she wants to say yes. And then there's Clara, who thinks she's winning at everything. So episode 5, one of my favorite episodes for so many different reasons. There's a lot of nonverbal. There's a lot of stuff happening without a lot of dialogue, which is my sweet spot. I love this episode. A lot happening. So if you have any questions about this episode, or you agree, disagree, whatever, we want to know your thoughts. We want to know what you think. You can reach out to me at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. You can also find us on our Facebook group, which is the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. Or you can find me on Twitter at Sanditon I had to think for a minute, or just search for Sanditon Chronicles. And we're also on Instagram under the.sanditon.chronicles, or just search for the Sanditon Chronicles. All those things I try to track regularly. I'm getting back into it, but we want to hear from you. Remember to rate, like, share, and subscribe. The more you do, the more I have a leg to stand on giving you the content that you need. And the better it'll be for you. The better it'll be for me too, obviously. But as a fan, I want to be able to give you, the fans, what you want. So tune in next week, and we'll see you in a week. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.